Good morning, everybody. Hope you all are doing well, and happy Tuesday, April 7th. Hunter and I are sitting here at the office, good 6 feet apart again, probably 10 feet apart, but we've got a lot of good content for today, and hopefully you can get a good takeaway from it. So we will see here, make sure I got the right screen here. So I said that we had this quote last year, toward the end of last year, but I thought it was appropriate today, by a guy named James Stockdale. If you've ever read the book Good to Great by Jim Collins, he had a conversation with this guy, James Stockdale, who was a former Vietnam POW, and he had this quote. It said, "You must never confuse faith that you will prevail in the end, but you can never afford to lose, with the discipline to confront the most brutal facts of your current reality, whatever they might be." So if you read the book, you may remember this conversation, but it said, Jim Collins was having a conversation with James Stockdale, and Collins said, "Well, when you were POW, who didn't make it out?" And Stockdale said, "Oh, well, that's easy." He said, "The optimists." Of course, that sounded confusing, and Collins said, "The optimists? I don't understand." I said, now completely confused. Given what he said 100 meters earlier, they're on a walk. Stockdale said, "The optimists, oh, those are the ones who said, we're going to be out by Christmas. And Christmas would come, and Christmas would go, and they'd say, we're going to be out by Easter. And then Easter would come, and Easter would go, and then Thanksgiving, and it would be Christmas again, and they ultimately died of a broken heart." So this reminded me of why this is important, because I think a lot of people are focused on, when is this going to end? When is this going to end? And they're pressing pause, hoping that this is just going to, have a magic date that somebody can forecast. And I think the reality is that nobody knows. We all hope it ends soon. But at the end of the day, you just have to confront the fact that we're in a new situation, and you got to keep doing what you're doing and do it well. And again, so the quote was, "You must never confuse the faith that you will prevail," which all of you will and can, which you can never afford to lose, with the discipline to confront the most brutal facts of your current reality, right? So thought that was appropriate for today. Just a good reminder to keep the discipline up. You have anything you're grateful for, Hunter?
So yeah, I got a lot. I've been saying the normal stuff, which is still like family's all healthy, everyone's good. So I thought I needed to come up with some new ones. One, I did get a haircut right before we got locked in a few weeks ago, so I am thankful for that. I noticed the beard's getting a little long.
Well,
there.
I was thinking about, I haven't shaved since I haven't gotten a haircut, and so that could be dangerous. We'll see.
You gonna do a little do-it-yourself action?
My wife did a do-it-yourself on my kids, and she tried to do it on me, and I said, no, thank you. I love you, Martha.
The other one is I am grateful for, I don't know if y'all seen David Payne's cocktail in quarantine segments on Facebook. So I'm excited to have learned about several of his favorite cocktails, and then to make my first martini, which, there's no such thing as a vodka martini, according to David. It's got to be gin and vermouth.
What about shaken, not stirred? Can you do that?
You can do either one.
Okay.
He prefers stirred. And you have to watch it yourself. But
I'll watch it.
There's some reasons for that. And then my favorite part about it is just how excited he gets when he's making the cocktail. And the more he progresses, he's getting towards the end, and you can just tell he's like, "Ooh, I can't wait to dig into this when I'm done."
It's about the journey, right?
It's about the journey, and I think for him, it's also about the reward at the end.
Well, that's good. Well, I'm grateful for a few things. One, I got a ton of notes from a lot of you, and I actually meant to bring them in today because there's a big stack, and I've read them all, and I'm super appreciative and super grateful for that. A lot of you watched the video I made a week or so ago, and I challenged you in the middle of the video to write some notes, and I dropped my address in there, so a lot of you all are paying attention, and grateful for that. So fun little trick. I'm also grateful. I walked out this morning, and it's kind of hard to see, but on the left there it says look for the positive, and my kids were drawing chalk and little rainbows, so that was a good thing to see right as I stepped off my walkway there. Some upcoming education. So we're live streaming a lot of education. Today, right after the sales meeting, we've got Wendy Monday, Mary Brooke Bonadies, and Karen Baker. Mary Brooke, sorry, I didn't put your last name on there. I was trying to squeeze everything in one line. But it's about dialogue, discussion, and marketing, creating impactful conversations of kindness, service, and sales during this sensitive time and beyond, while trying to support your business. So this would be sharing, scripts. Nobody really likes the word scripts, but dialogues, language, tips, and best practices. So we'll send out this link right after the meeting as a reminder. But about 10:30, tune into that. And then Thursday, we're going to have another Boomtown class as a follow-up to last week. So at 11 a.m., we'll have a Boomtown class, and again, that'll be on Zoom, so everybody can participate. And we'll send the link to that. We'll record both of these and put them on the Facebook page and in the vLearn platform, and then also on the YouTube channel, and we'll send out the links by email. How's the market, Hunter? What do you want to tell us?
So I guess just reiterate, I've over the last few weeks kind of dialed down my news feeds. Just the news has been helpful in a lot of ways, but also I think can be alarming and overly so. And a lot of times the headlines don't match up with reality. So I saw a headline that predicted a residential real estate crash, and so I'm like, all right, gotta click on that. And you go into the body of the article, and the dire projection was for a 4% reduction in home prices. And so obviously no one wants a 4% reduction, but that was hardly the crash I was expecting to be reading about based on the headline. And if you go to the next slide, this is another one. This is in USA Today, so it's a big publication. The headline compares the coronavirus deaths with the fatalities of 6 wars combined, and so that's alarming. And you dig into the body of the story, and the 6 wars they're talking about are the American Revolution, the War of 1812, the Mexican War, Indian Wars, and Desert Storm. So I mean, we had a lot more deaths in World War I, World War II, and so just be careful with the headlines. Be careful.
Testing 1, 2. I think we might be up and running. Can you see us at all? Sweet. You're good? Can you hear us? Yeah. All right, y'all, we're going to get back. Sorry about that. We're pretty excited about David's cocktails there. And this is happening. All right, so I think we've got, hopefully the sound might be a little bit lower, but y'all chat. Jeremy's watching the chat boxes. We have to switch microphones, but hopefully you can see us and hear us. So.
All right. So basically, I don't know where exactly we left off, but keep going forward. We got some good news. Hospitalizations have declined in New York, just kind of an epicenter. LA, California has seen the same thing. The number of new cases in the US appears to have fallen in recent days. Italy's hit 15 straight days of lower new infections. Spain, same thing, 10 straight days. South Korea has reported less than 50 new cases for the second day running. And then China yesterday posted no new deaths for the first time since January when it started publishing data. So our social distancing efforts appear to be working. So
that's good.
It's great news. If you look at the stocks currently for the second straight day, the market's opened at about 8:30 this morning, and we see another surge. And
800 points in one day.
Well, yesterday was 1,600.
Wow.
So 800 so far today. But home building stocks have kind of led the recovery. Now they were beaten up pretty good over the last couple of weeks, but KB Homes rose 21% yesterday. Lennar and DR Horton, two big national home builders, also increased about 15%. So if you go to the next slide, the market was up yesterday about 7%, and you can just kind of look over the last week at the volatility, the ups and downs. It's really crazy to try and guess what the market is going to do day to day, so I wouldn't recommend trying, but just kind of brace yourself for just like the rest of this recovery, some ups and downs, some good news and bad news. And about the only thing you can be sure of in the market is that in 5 to 10 years, it's going to be higher than it is right now. And so just take that long-term perspective. Year to date, we are down from our highs about 20% currently. And that's the worst year we've had since 2008 when we were down 33%. So we have periods like this where the market corrects and goes down, and again, just would recommend that long-term perspective when you're thinking about the market. Thought it would be, since we're talking about the market, we would mention who's consistently hailed as the best investor of our lifetime, Warren Buffett, who's always smiling. Probably because he's worth like $90 billion. Although I think he would be smiling like even if he wasn't. He just seems to be a good-natured person all the way around. We talked about him probably almost a year ago. He has some effective strategies that he's used to kind of achieve his success, and one of those is known as the 5-25 strategy, and it comes from a story that he's told about his personal pilot was asking for advice. His pilot, I think, kind of like, he'd gotten to know him. Warren Buffett's an approachable person apparently, and so he asked Mr. Buffett for some advice, and so the advice goes like this. If you go to the next slide. He tells his pilot, the first thing he needs to do is write a list of his top 25 lifetime goals. And so that list totals 25, and then the next thing he says is draw a circle around your top five of those 25 most important goals. Now the pilot was hesitant. He's like, this is my list of 25. These are all important to me, but he circles the top 5. And so in the next step, Buffett tells him just to focus on the top 5 and ignore the rest. And the pilot's like, okay, yeah, let's focus on my top 5, and then I'll just use the rest of my time to intermittently work on the other 20 or so. And Buffett was very direct. He said, no, you've got it wrong. everything that you didn't circle in your top 5 becomes your avoid at all costs list.
Avoid at all costs, not
Avoid
just
at all
on
costs, yeah.
purpose.
So no matter what, until you get these top 5 done, you can't work on anything else. And the whole moral of it is that we have a limited amount of time and energy to achieve our goals. And more times than not, we can spread ourselves too thin, focusing on too many things. So, little art describing that. And we don't want to get overly distracted. And so this can apply to us, not just with lifetime goals, but today as we think about our daily schedules. And I'll admit, like, I have struggled working from home efficiently. Just with distractions and being out of my normal routine. I think, like, historically, I'm a pretty consistent hard worker, and this has been a struggle. I've had to kind of go back to some of these basic ideas of, I'll even define it like, what are the 3 things that I really want to get done today? And no Netflix during the day, kind of time block my day, but Ozarks is dying to be watched right now during the day, and I just have to like make some rules, like no Ozarks.
Soap operas are okay.
No soap operas. And some other rules I have, like I gotta get some exercise outside, especially with the weather being nice. So I'll go for a walk, go for a run. Gotta call like a high school or a college friend, like just to reconnect. It's a good time. Everyone's at home. Everyone seems to, if you're not a healthcare worker, have a little more bandwidth in your day. So it's just been a great opportunity to catch up with some folks I hadn't talked to in 5 or 10 years in some cases. And then also to call a family member that doesn't live inside my house. So mom, cousin, aunt. So those are some strategies.
Just a quick side note, Hunter, best practice when he preaches being a hard worker and an exerciser. I called him the other day and he says, hello? And I said, is now a bad time? You out for a run? He's like, yeah, but I can talk. Literally, we talked for 5 minutes while he was on a run. I was kind of impressed, and he was able to hold a whole conversation while doing that, so I was inspired.
So a couple things village-wise. So we want to use this time to support you, our agents. So there may be some things that have been on your to-do list or you're stuck on. And so I really want to encourage you to kind of outside what some of the things our staff normally is able to do with during this time. I think we can utilize them effectively. So if there's something that you're stuck on, go through your broker and let's have them kind of coordinate which staff member has the bandwidth or might be the best person to do this. And some ideas that I've got, next slide, would be, like get your database in order. This is, my database is just in my either contacts on my computer, or next slide, it's also I know. It's also, my Google contacts. And so getting those in a spreadsheet so that I can, or getting them, next slide, into like one of our tools like Lolo, so I can use that when that time is right again, we're all back out, or an email campaign like Emma or MailChimp. Also doing some things like, hey, my email signature is kind of a mess or not professional across all my devices. What can I do to kind of tighten that up? Let me get a buyer consultation package done and really dialed in, or a listing. All this stuff is on our market, but if you need help either walking through it or customizing one of these, your bio page on the website, getting that showing up well. Let's use our broker team and our staff. We're here to help, and so reach out. Let's start reaching out to your broker, and then they can kind of help make sure, and we'll just kind of see how this goes over the next couple of weeks. But we really want to be here
to input stuff in your database. But a lot of people, I know most of you all have databases, but a lot of realtors don't. and it's overwhelming. So whatever format that's in, if it's in a notebook, we'll help you figure it out. If it's in, if you say I don't even know how to export something, let us know. We're gonna work with you and work with our staff to help take you by the hand and get you where you need to be to at least be able to more effectively talk to your clients in your database.
And then finally, just stay in touch with each other. Just like Zach, I appreciate those of you who've reached out to us. It's fun to hear from you, hear how it's going. It seems like everyone's hanging in really well. And so if you need something from Zach or I, definitely reach out. We'll get through this. Opportunities are going to merge. Stay positive to the extent you can. And also stay practical and realistic, and we'll get through it.
That's right. All right. So we've got a little bit of data to cover. So real estate showings. This is in Tennessee, so we've been looking at that. Obviously, if you look, I think you can see my mouse on the screen. So you see on March 11th we started having a downtick. When we started to come back up, this is really the last couple of days. This little dip. Typically, I think Monday and Tuesday are not great showing days anyway. So over the weekend, we did have some good activity. So a little bit of a decline here, but I think by the end of this week, we'll see an uptick. I think where you see that uptick is right here is just from agents starting to be able to know how to do this, how to get out there, what works, what doesn't work, what they're comfortable with, what their clients are comfortable with, what the sellers are comfortable with. So just everybody's starting to get the hang of this. And obviously, without struggle, there's no progress, right? Little Nelson Mandela. So you gotta just figure it out. It's not totally comfortable. And if you're not comfortable, talk to another agent who is comfortable and ask him to show some property for you. Some updated numbers. So I changed these, or I updated these from Monday to Sunday. So 2 weeks ago, new listings 387. Last week 402. So there's still a lot of activity coming out. Back in the market, or back to active showing. 102 last week, or 2 weeks ago, and then 110 the last week. That's pretty consistent. It's been in the 90 range, jumped up a little bit. This is just David's accounting. I have to pull all these numbers manually. It's kind of a little bit of a process, but we're going to put this some of this data in a more in a prettier format this week, and we'll let you start sharing that so that hopefully it's valuable to you. And you can show your clients. One of the really cool things, look at this, under contract. 136 listings under contract 2 weeks ago, 174 listings under contract this week. So pretty cool. Price changes, there were a few more price changes, so people are being reactive, responsive, doing some price changes, but it's nothing huge. The median price change was a $5,000 decrease. If you look at any consistent week, any week in Davidson County's market, that's pretty consistent. The most price changes, the median is about 5% or $5,000 or 1.4%. So a handful of expired listings, obviously those are just, that's typical. I think that was probably the end of the month because that was 3:30 to 4:05. So end of the month is, you're always going to see an uptick on that. But look at these closings. 232 closings from 2 weeks ago, and last week we had over 100 more closings. So a lot of people still getting to the closing table, a lot of people that are making it happen. So Connie's going to talk to you in a minute about rates and loans and what's working, what's not working, and she'll give you some insight on that. But I thought those under contract numbers were pretty awesome, and those closing numbers were pretty awesome. So feel free to interpret that data or send it out or share it, but we'll put that in a prettier format here soon, so you can share that with your database. A couple more leading indicators. So if you look at mortgage applications, so if you think of the buyer process, right? So you've got a buyer that comes in, you've got they start meeting with an agent, their agent, hopefully, if they do a good job, says, hey, have you talked to a lender? Have you talked to Connie? Have you talked to Roger? If not, you ought to do that. So they'll go through that process and they'll start applying for loans. Applying for loans is a good sign that there's activity that's about to happen. So this is looking at the last year. There's a handful of spikes. But in March, when rates got really low, and a lot of these are refinance applications, but the application hit an all-time high. I think that all-time high of its notes here was, let's see here, March 27th. Where are my notes? Well, I had some notes. ignore my notes. Anyway, the all-time high was like 50-something%. Obviously, you can see it's like 55% above whatever that baseline is when the tracking started. So the highest number of mortgage applications in the history of the tracking. And then rates, because of that, rates took a jump. I think in 1 week they went from like 3% to 5% and then back down to the 3s. So it's just crazy. So that dropped off, but now we're back up. So there's still a lot of people applying for loans. Rates are good. So I think that's all positive activity that, what are my numbers? Look, I just did the next slide, 55.4%. The all-time low as a comparison was negative 38%. And again, this baseline of 0 is just when they started tracking in the mid-2000s. But the all-time low is January 2009. So we are nowhere near that. Even at our low point in the last year, it was still a good 10 percentage points shy of that. So pretty good data there. Application forecast, this is from a site called tradingeconomics.com. If you want to go play around with some data, there's some good stuff there. They're seeing, obviously, the trend, it jumped up, but they're seeing mortgage applications decline a little bit. I think some of that's typical for just the time of the year as things, get into the late summer and fall and winter months. But obviously, there's just, somebody's opinion of forecasting that that's going to drop down a little bit. So while the getting's good, get out there, start showing some properties, and take advantage of the people that are applying for mortgages. So, Connie, you've got some rate info and some mortgage info for us.
Yeah, so rates are still really good. 3.25 on a 30-year fixed, but we have seen in the last week a lot of changes in the mortgage industry. Some pretty significant changes, actually. Although rates are still really good for people with really good credit, we've seen a lot of the investors are actually a huge change to government loans. So FHA, VA, all of a sudden, like in the last week, went from where we used to be able to do an FHA loan down to a 580 score. Those credit score requirements have increased significantly. You can't even get an FHA loan under a 640 score anymore. And many of our investors, aren't even pricing under 660 or even 680. So trying to get an FHA loan is way more challenging and way more costly. So just for an example, before the first, I was able to price an FHA loan with a 660 score at about 3 1/8 with no points. And then today we're looking at about 3.75, and that's costing about 1.5 points.
So just remind everybody, what is a point? What is that?
So on a 1.5 points on a $200,000 loan is going to be like $3,000.
So it's 1.5 percentage points of the loan.
Of the loan amount.
Got it. And that's the cost. That's not how much your rate. So you're not dropping your rate by 1.5 percentage points.
No,
that's just the cost.
That's the cost to get that rate, just to get the loan. So what's happening, and it's like in the past we were able to do like a higher interest rate and without points. So instead of maybe 3.75, we could go up to 4.5, and without points. That's not even an option anymore. So the investors are saying now it's to even get that loan with that credit score, you're having to pay these points. They're like mandatory points. The reason is because a lot of the investors are looking at over the period of time, in a higher interest rate environment, that customer is going to refinance. So they're going to lose out. They make their money obviously over time with those spreads. So by offering a higher rate at no points, they know they're just going to refinance and they're going to lose out. The other thing too with a riskier loan is basically with the forbearance right now too. I mean, that's playing into it. So they're looking at, is this person going to be able to make their payments? Are we going to have to go into a forbearance situation? So they're basically, those investors are charging their, what they're making up front in those points. So we're seeing that in some of the riskier loans again. And so a lot of times, again, just getting a higher rate with no cost is not even an option.
Okay, getting a higher rate with it. Okay, and so if just some practical advice, if one of our agents has a closing in the next week, I've heard that most lenders are doing, a kind of last day before closing, day of closing, just one more time, job verification.
Yes.
So they need to make sure that their employer is on standby.
Yes,
to be able to answer the phone, get a letter,
Yeah.
get some sort of confirmation that they still have a job and they're employed.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely talk to, we're talking to him as well, letting him know that we are having to do those verifications, really even the day of closing in many cases. So it's, having someone on standby, being able to communicate with their employer to make sure that they have a job. Another thing that just came out today, this morning, was with self-employed borrowers. They're now we're having to go to extra lengths to verify that they actually have an income stream coming in. So whether that's contracts or invoices or some kind of form of verification just to show that they actually still have some income coming in. So that's just came out this morning. Higher debt to income restrictions for government loans, jumbo loans, and many of our investors have completely suspended jumbo loans altogether. So that's becoming more challenging. And where we had like maybe 8 investors before, we've got 2 that we can even select from, and the prices have gone up considerably on those. So rates have really jumped. Reserve requirements. If you have anybody is really approved for an FHA loan or VA loan, you may want to check with the lender. Just make sure that they were locked in. Because a lot of times now, if they're not locked in, they may not even be able to get the program. So just a lot of changes that are going on to be aware of.
All right.
Yeah, so that's about it.
Good stuff. All righty, here we go. Sure, but Jeremy, I think we're still. Is everything still working okay? Hopefully, everything's still working okay. I'm not able to see all this right now, but okay. So some kind of real-time data. This is really looking at active data. Obviously, the closings are great. That's a really good sign that there's still closings happening. And I think sometimes people will freak out and maybe they'll try to bail out of contracts and not close. So I think that's a good sign. But it's sometimes also helpful just looking at real-time data. So I pulled this from a platform that aggregates RealTrack's data and sharing this. So looking at inventory, this is over from the beginning of the year to the end of the year. So inventory, right? Lower inventory typically means prices rise because if there's equal demand and inventory goes down, then supply and demand, et cetera, you get it. So this little choppy line, little dotted line is a 7-day average, and then this dark line is a 90-day average. I would just look at the 7-day average because that's what's going to give you the most real-time information. So inventory was going down, down, down. Inventory went up in kind of mid-March, right? So there's a little bit more inventory on the market. That could mean that maybe not quite as much stuff is selling, but it's also the springtime. So that's when a lot of people are putting their homes in the market. So we're still seeing people put their homes in the market. And I think there are a lot of questions about how to do this if you're meeting with a seller. Some sellers want to have a vacant house. Some sellers don't mind being there. I think you give them choices and consequences. If somebody is there and is not willing to show it, or only willing to show it a certain amount of time, then maybe they're saying, well, I only want people in here on Tuesdays and Thursdays. That's okay. Just let them know that the less able they are to show their home, the less ability you are to sell it, or the less ability you have to sell it. So these choices and consequences. Everything that negates your ability to show that home as a listing agent is going to ultimately affect their price. So when you're talking to sellers, just make sure you're saying, all right, if you've got it, if you move into a hotel and we get it staged and it looks beautiful and we can show it anytime, this is the price that you're able to sell it for. If we have a lot of limits on our ability to show, that's okay if that's your comfort level, but this is probably where we'll be able to sell it. It's a little bit less. So talk to them about those choices and consequences. This is Nashville. If you look at Franklin, Franklin has had a little spike of inventory here in February, went down, and you're seeing more inventory, more homes come to the market. If you're looking at the median list price, right? So the median list price has still been going up in Nashville from about $460,000 to $500,000. So that means more expensive homes are coming on the market. That stayed steady the last little bit. And then the median list price in Franklin from $720,000. We had a little spike a couple weeks ago at $780,000, but right now the median list price is about $745,000 or so. And then this is interesting. So properties with a price decrease. So tracking how many price reductions, the percentage of properties that will reduce their price. So we looked at some of that data. The median in Nashville, the median price decrease was not that much. It was about between $5,000 and $6,500, and that's pretty typical. But I wanted to see if there were any trends with the number of properties taking a price decrease. It's actually been declining the last 3 months. So there's not that many properties decreasing in price. We've seen a little bit of an uptick over the last couple of weeks, but it's nowhere near what it was back in January, which is kind of interesting, right? So you might say, oh gosh, everybody's reducing their price, and this is what you might hear, right? But you can point to the data and say, actually, only about 27% of the market has had a price reduction. By contrast, that's actually 10% less than what it was a couple months ago. In Williamson County, very similar thing, right? So you've got, Franklin, you've got 30% back in January, and then right now it's about 20%. So a tiny little uptick, but nowhere near what it was a couple months ago. Tools, so we've got this email was emailed out to you by Caitlin last week, and just a quick way to show your buyer clients how you want to show homes. So it's just a helpful tool to post, send out. And again, if you didn't, I think that's on the market, but if you didn't get it, check your email from a week ago. And either Caitlin sent it out or your broker. I think your broker actually may have sent it out. A couple tips. We said this last week. Stay connected with your agents. Talk to each other. Y'all are doing a lot of chatting right now. Probably making fun of us for not being able to get our tech stuff together. That's great. Stay in touch with your agents. Get outside in the blood forum. Go for a run, like Hunter said, and watch them read something positive every day. No matter how off track you got today, you can hit reset every single morning, and that's a good thing.
Ozark is not positive.
Ozark is not positive. But
At all.
It's fiction. It's fiction, right?
Yes.
And it's funny, after watching that, every time I say my client, I just think of that really intimidating attorney who I haven't started the third season, but she scares me.
Yeah, she's crazy.
I mean, you watch her. She never blinks. She just stares at you and waits for you to make a wrong move.
Ruth Langmore.
Ruth Langmore.
She's awesome.
Wow.
She's tough.
She's tough.
Love her.
Talk about grit.
Love her.
All right, coming soon. Don't forget, enter comingsoon.villagetn.com. Enter your coming soon today, and I'll send that link out. I'll enter them after the meeting. I'll send that link out here around lunchtime. Actually, because of the panel that's coming up, I'll wait till a little bit after lunch to send that out. So if you want to do it after the panel, you can do that. And then just takeaways. Obviously, we had a lot of really good stuff today. We'll put these slides up. I'll send them out by email, and I'll put them up on the VLearn site, which is vlearn.villagetn.com. So vlearn.villagetn.com, and then we'll put a link to this video, including the little mishap in between. We'll put a link to that on there as well. So up next, in about 10 minutes, 8 to 10 minutes, Teddy Pins has arranged a really incredible panel with Wendy Mundy, Mary Properties, and Karen Baker to talk about dialogues. All of them are really good at one, they talk to a lot of other agents, and they listen to things and they talk it through with other agents, and then they feel confident and comfortable in being able to talk through how to interpret the market and what they're seeing in a professional and competent way. So they do that with their agents first, their fellow agents first, and then talk about it with their clients. And so they're going to teach you how to do that and how they do that. And so if you look at this Zoom link, don't try to write it down. I'm going to email it out in just a second. But that is available in, again, about 7 or 8 minutes. So go get a coffee break, and we'll see you back here then. Thanks, y'all.